it's the natural duty of every intelligent being to try to discover the true nature of its own existence. It owes it to itself, because as long as it doesn't have that information accurately, it really cannot be a proper version of itself. And this would naturally evolve within any human mind, these questions. And they do, for the most part. Most people will start thinking about the questions of the origin, the purpose. What is really happening here? Something just seems amiss. We're busy with the wrong things. Who are we? Why are we here? What's the purpose of all this? Who would invest all this and not even give us clear direction about what we're trying to accomplish? But there's something that throws people off, that pushes them back, that doesn't allow them to follow through on these questions. And this is related to the suffering, the pain, the difficulties that are happening in the world, that seem to contradict what we would conclude based on the beliefs of the unity. If the unity is the only thing that there is, if all there is one, then who is causing suffering to whom and why? Where can that go wrong? How can this take place? This is the question that causes many to back away from trying to understand more deeply the true nature of reality, because they're concerned about the true source of the suffering and what is the place of that source in the ultimate source. How did that source get so much power to even cause suffering to the ultimate reason, the ultimate purpose of what we're creating? How did that happen? And so this question resulted in the beliefs of the dualists. The dualists believed that there's a source of light and there's a source of darkness. There's a source of good and there's a source of evil. And these sources, they're battling with each other. And we can decide who wins based on our manifestations. Who are we manifesting for? And based on who wins, that's what controls the planet. This was the belief of the dualists. And this was the source of all forms of sorcery. Because now that we gave the evil side a throne, now there was access to all types of powers through the evil side as well. And yet our belief is that the evil doesn't have a source in reality. The evil is sourced only in the imagination of man. The imagination of man created the concept of evil and used that to explain the ignorance of those who are not searching for the truth. And so wherever the ignorance resulted in suffering, we would say, oh, don't blame us. It's not that we're not intelligent enough. We're very bright. But there is an evil one somewhere out there, and he's forcing his hand, and therefore we're suffering. Don't look at me. Don't blame me. I've been telling you the truth all along, but there's something somewhere that's causing suffering. That's why you're suffering. And so, once we can say something somewhere, who's that something? And where is that somewhere? It's open for interpretation. The imagination can go anywhere. And so now, we're pushing the source of suffering into the realm of the imagination. An undefined entity that somehow attacks in ways that no one knows. And so anything basically can be under this category. There's really no longer any way of assuring that there's any consistency to this theory. And so the name for the ignorance of man meaning that man reverts back to the behavior of an animal. An animal runs based on instinct and imagination, lacks intelligence to realize the greater good, doesn't realize the effects and the consequences of their interactions with reality. And so when man believes not in accordance with the truth, the intelligence cannot reside within that spirit, and therefore it reverts back to the animal self, to the imagination, to instinct, and not to intelligence. It's not really behaving in its own good. And so the test that man is facing since Adam Rishon, since we learned how to speak, is the midah called pachad, fear. Fear is what we're being trained to tolerate in a way that it motivates us, in a way that it doesn't cause damage to our intelligence. And so all the tests ultimately that a human being is going through are related to their ability to remain intelligent in the moments of important choices. And the intelligence that they're going to have in those moments is not going to depend so much in what happens in those moments, but it's going to depend on what took place before. How did they train before these moments came? How did they interact with life before these moments came? Was there an intentional interaction, or was life just something that they were somehow trying to get through, get by, survive, and now suddenly, whoa, didn't expect this one. So if life was lived intentionally, then everything that happens in life is part of that process. But if life is not lived intentionally, then anything that happens is a burden. And so how is one going to get to live life intentionally if they can relate to what's taking place? How are they going to be able to relate to what's taking place if they understand and they questioned and they cared enough to try to find out? And so this theme we see throughout Tanakh, throughout the writings of the prophets, that the ultimate test of a person is whether they're searching for the truth. Whether they find the truth is not the test, and this is not something that can be expected. Finding the truth is part of the reward. It's not part of the test. The test is searching for the truth, being intelligent enough to know that your life your afterlife, your children's life, your grandchildren's life, till the end of generation depends on it. It depends on your relationship with reality. How real were you while you were? And so this searching means that the heart is awake, and therefore it will not violate the truth. Because the truth, when it's vulnerable, is visible to the one who cares. But if one doesn't care for the truth, but he's keeping different rules, different instructions, trying to avoid punishment, that person will certainly violate the truth. The truth cannot be found by the brain alone. Only a heart that is awake can guide the brain to know what to even think in order to find the truth. And so this predicament of how can the one turn into a problem for itself, this predicament is demonstrated also with the animals, the kosher animals, the non-kosher animals, the farm animals, the domesticated animals versus the predatory animals, the animals that are dangerous to humans and to other species. And so here again we see within nature the demonstration of how in this place where there can be no corruption, as far as we understand, there is a demonstration of aggressive behavior, behavior that would seem that is against the unity, and yet if we observe the environments where these animals are placed and the interaction between the animals, we see the intention, we see how everything was designed so that everyone gets what they need. And so we see intention even in these places that we would assume should indicate that there is something amiss in the unity. The unity is not getting along with itself. And yet, no, we see that the intelligence is getting along with itself just fine. Even in these places, the intelligence designed specifically so. And so this requires deeper analysis. This doesn't deny the unity. It simply indicates a deeper level of perception that is required in order to peel the layers of what is really happening. Now this is what David HaMelech is referring to when he says, Ish bar le'yedo chsil le'yoven azois. A person who is not wise will not be able to understand b'frech rishon kemo yesev v'yitzitzu kol poya le'yoven lisham dem adeyad. That we see all this evil that seems to be rising from the ground, and we don't understand that the ultimate purpose of why it's coming out into the open is so that by manifesting them, they get marked for what they are. And then there's already a process of how they're going to be eliminated. All forms of behavior that have been marked by humanity as unacceptable will eventually disappear from the planet. This is part of the design. And so some of these behaviors went to extremes in order to teach us the power that we have and the consequences of what happens when we get it wrong. And this eventually will be the fuel for those who want to get it right, to remember that they must get it right. It's not just a luxury to get it right, it's a necessity. Humanity can't live without it. The past will keep on reminding us that humanity has to keep getting it right. If we forget how to get it right, then getting it wrong will be very, very costly. There's something here that justifies what's happening. And this something was known. This something was understood. People could relate to what's taking place on this planet much more than we can relate now. They didn't know the plan, they didn't know the intention, but they knew at least how it works. They knew how to avoid certain problems that today not only don't we know how to avoid, but we don't even know today how to diagnose. We don't understand to the spiritual nature. We don't understand what's right and what's wrong. We don't understand the consequences of living a certain way, of thinking a certain way, and of believing a certain way. And so just like in the external world, there are animals that are dangerous to humans until we get to a certain level. And there are animals that are helpful to humans. There are animals that can be of service to humans. There are animals that can feed humans. And so the same way in the internal world, in the world of thought, in the world of beliefs. In all worlds there are creations, there are forms that are compatible with who we are, and there are forms that are not complementary to who we are. There are forms that cause us to have reactions that are helpful to ourselves and to others, and there are forms that create reactions that are harmful to self and other. And somehow, within the unity, this was the purpose, this was the goal. At the level that we are, this is the goal. The goal is to see the differences and to learn how to choose. This is the level of development that we're going through. There are levels beyond our level, there are levels below our level, but this is where we are now, is that we need to learn how to choose in order to create something that is compatible to ourselves, because we were given that power, and that's obvious. It's obvious that we were given that power not only because we can see that we can choose, but we can also see how long we can choose wrong and no one will interfere. So this means we have the absolute power. We can choose as wrong as we want and it will still happen. Life will go on. We can choose so wrong that millions and millions of people are suffering and we will still wake up the next day. That's the power of choice that we were given. No one will interfere. We are the ones that are supposed to interfere. We are the ones that are choosing. We're letting things happen. We're making things happen. We're the ones that are happening. We're happening to the world. The world's not happening to us. As an individual, you could say the world is happening to us. As a collective, we're happening to the world. And the world's not doing so well. And so we see in the external demonstration, and we learn for the internal reality. We see in the Olam HaMaaseh, the world of action, and we understand to the Olam HaMachshava, the world of thought. This is how we were designed. This is on purpose. So everything outside is a demonstration. Everything that was created, everything that's called in my name, which means everything that I've given existence, I created it for my glory, That's why I formed it. That's why I made it. What is His glory? His glory is our realization that everything is intentional and there is no other force. That's His glory. His glory is that He hid behind the potential of there being someone else or something else, and we are intelligent enough to realize that no, there is no one else. There can be no one else. There never was and there never will be. It doesn't have from where to come and it doesn't have where to go. And so if there's a problem, it's because we are the someone else. We, the particle that went into the darkness, we became someone else to reality. And therefore now there is someone else. If we took on that mask, there is. And so how do we remove that someone else? By removing our own perception of that someone else and returning to silence. And then there is no one else. And then when there is no one else, there's just the unity. There's just one. The same one that always was. He's back to being alone. That's what it means. B'yom hahu yeh Hashem echad, ishmo echad. Hashem echad, that's always. How can there be anything else? Ishmo echad, our perception of Him should be united. That will be then. Right now, our perception of Him is very segregated, very confused. We have different interpretations, different understandings, and we don't really have a clear vision. And what will change, what will give us access to the Shmo Echad, is that there will be no more suffering. The obstacle will be removed. It will no longer be a test of intelligence to know if He loves us. Everyone will feel and see that He loves us. Now it's a test. Can you see? Can you look behind all the madness and see that there's something real? But then you won't have to look behind any madness. There won't be any madness. And then it will be obvious to everyone what He is to us and why He made us. We'll be able to feel it. We'll be able to know it. It won't require any tests. It won't require any development. We'll be able to feel it from the moment we start our lives throughout every moment of existence. And so, B'yom hahu yeh Hashem echad, ishmo echad. May it happen soon.